March 19th, 1944. Southern Bougainville, Solomon Islands. The jungle canopy overhead filters the equatorial sun into fractured green light. Shadows laying over shadows, every vine a potential snare, every rustle a possible death. A lone U.S. Marine scout moves through waist-high undergrowth. His rifle carries something the other men don't trust, something they've mocked for 3 months, a hunting scope ordered through a Sears catalogue, $32 including shipping. Mounted on his Springfield with aluminum scraps, he filed down himself. His name is Elias Brennick, though the men call him Mailbox behind his back. Not out of affection, but derision, because the scope came through the mail. A civilian hunting accessory brought into one of the most lethal theaters of the Pacific War, where Japanese snipers have turned the jungle into a killing gallery. His platoon sergeant told him he was suicidal. His squad mates whispered he'd be dead within a week. But on this morning, moving through the dense undergrowth toward Ridge Green, where 3 Marines were killed yesterday by invisible shooters, Brennick adjusts the Weaver 330C scope and prepares to prove them all wrong. The bodies are still out there, sprawled where they fell. No one willing to risk recovery under the sniper's overwatch. Brennick knows what he has to do. He learned it in the mountains of Pennsylvania, hunting white-tailed deer with his father. Patience, observation. 1 shot, 1 kill. Because bullets cost money his family didn't have. But that was another life. Before his father died, before the war, before he understood that the skills learned in peaceful mountains could be used for this, for hunting men. He moves forward, silent, focused. The scope that everyone mocked now his only advantage against an enemy that's killed 30 Marines in 2 weeks. They called it a toy gun. They said the mail-order scope wouldn't last a day in combat conditions. They were wrong. But first Brennick has to survive the next 4 hours. Elias Brennick grew up in rural Pennsylvania in the Allegheny foothills, where the mountains roll like frozen waves and winter comes early and stays late. His father owned 40 acres of hardwood forest and worked as a contract logger. Hard work, dangerous work, the kind that aged men fast and killed them young. The Brennick farm sat at the end of a dirt road that became impassable 3 months each year when the snow came. Population of the nearest town was 412. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone struggled through the same Depression-era poverty that turned ambition into survival and dreams into next week's meal. Elias was 8 years old when his father first took him hunting. November morning, 1932. Temperature below freezing. Frost forming on the rifle barrel as they sat in the deer stand watching the tree line for movement that meant game approaching. His father had been a hunter his entire life, a man who spoke more through actions than words, who taught his son that the forest revealed its secrets only to those willing to wait. They sat for 6 hours that first morning. Didn't fire a single shot. Elias's feet went numb inside his boots. His fingers ached from the cold. But his father remained motionless, teaching through silence what patience really meant. The lesson wasn't about killing deer. It was about understanding that success required more than desire. It required discipline, control, the ability to endure discomfort while remaining absolutely focused on the objective. When they finally saw the buck stepping cautious through the underbrush 200 yards distant, his father handed him the rifle. A bolt-action Springfield from the Great War. Heavy, solid, the woodstock worn smooth from decades of use. His father's hand steadied the barrel, his voice barely a whisper. Breathe slow. Let half out, the space between heartbeats. That's where you take the shot. Elias squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. The recoil punched his shoulder. Through the dissipating smoke, he saw the buck drop. Clean. Instant. 1 shot. His father nodded once. No celebration. No congratulations. Just acknowledgement that the job was done correctly. That night, processing the deer in the barn, his father explained the mathematics of Depression-era hunting. Every bullet costs 15 cents. That's 15 cents we don't have. So every bullet has to count. You don't shoot hoping to hit. You shoot knowing you'll hit. Understand? Elias understood. In the years that followed, he never wasted ammunition. He learned to read wind by watching branches sway. Learned to calculate distance by eye using landmarks and angles. Learned to control his breathing so his chest wouldn't move and disturb his aim. He learned to distinguish between the sound of wind through pine needles and the sound of an animal moving through underbrush. Learned that the forest spoke a language most people never bothered to understand. His father taught him that hunting wasn't about domination. It was about respect. Respect for the animal. Respect for the environment. Respect for the weapon that made a clean kill possible. A good hunter knows when to pull the trigger, his father told him one evening, cleaning rifles by lantern light. But a great hunter also knows when to put the gun down. Elias didn't fully understand that second part. Not then. Not until much later, when the hunting changed from deer to men, and the cost became something money couldn't measure. The years passed. Elias became an exceptional marksman. By age 15, he could hit a target at 300 yards in crosswind conditions. By 16, he'd never missed a shot during hunting season. The family ate well because of his skills. Venison through the winter. The hides sold for whatever price they could get. His father was proud. Quietly proud in the way men of that generation showed approval. A hand on the shoulder, a nod across the dinner table, an extra portion of meat on the plate. Then came 1941. October. A logging accident up in the North 40. A widowmaker branch dead wood hanging 70 feet up that broke loose without warning. His father never saw it coming. Elias was 17. Suddenly responsible for his mother, for the farm, for debts he didn't know existed. The rifle his father taught him to shoot now felt like an accusation. A reminder of every lesson he'd learned that couldn't save the man who mattered most. He tried to work the logging contracts himself. Tried to maintain the farm. But the weight of it crushed him. The grief, the responsibility, the constant reminder that his father's strength was something he hadn't inherited. December 7th, 1941. Pearl Harbor. The radio crackling with news that changed everything. Elias enlisted the following week. Not out of patriotism, though that existed. Not out of duty, though he felt that too. But out of desperate need to escape, to leave behind the farm where his father died. To transform the grief into something useful. The Marine Corps recruiter in town looked at his birth certificate and nodded. "You ever fire a rifle, son?" "Yes, sir, since I was 8. "Good. Marines need shooters." Elias didn't tell him about the hunting, didn't mention the hundreds of hours in deer stands, didn't explain that he'd learned patience and precision in mountains where mistakes meant an empty freezer and a hungry winter. He just signed the papers and left Pennsylvania behind. Boot camp at Paris Island, the rifle range, the M1 Garand issued to every recruit, semi-automatic, 8-round clip, designed for volume of fire, not precision. Elias qualified expert on the first attempt. The drill instructor noticed. "You shoot before Brennick." "Hunting, sir. Pennsylvania." "Well, forget that. This ain't hunting. This is war. You point, you shoot, you reload. Volume matters more than accuracy. Understood?" "Yes, sir." But Elias didn't forget. Couldn't forget. The lessons his father taught were carved into muscle memory, into instinct. The Marine Corps could teach him new tactics, but it couldn't erase what the mountains had already written into his soul. After boot camp came infantry training, then assignment to the 3rd Marine Division, then the long transport across the Pacific. Weeks at sea, watching the horizon, wondering what waited on the other side. They landed at Bougainville in January 1944, the Solomon Islands. Strategic position in the island-hopping campaign toward Japan. The island was supposed to be secured. The briefing said enemy resistance was minimal. The briefing was wrong. Japanese forces had fortified the interior, prepared defensive positions, and deployed something the Marines hadn't anticipated: snipers. Dozens of them. Veterans trained at specialized schools where they'd spent months learning fieldcraft and marksmanship, equipped with quality optics and purpose-built rifles. Men who could remain motionless for entire days, tied into trees with harnesses, camouflaged so effectively they became part of the jungle itself. The killings started immediately. Marines dropped mid-sentence. Single bullet through the skull, the shooter invisible in the canopy. Entire patrols pinned down for hours by one hidden rifleman. Morale bleeding out with every minute of helplessness. Good men killed by an enemy they never saw. Their bodies left in the open because recovering them meant walking into the sniper's kill zone. In the first 2 weeks, Elias's company lost 12 men to sniper fire. 12 Marines who'd survived boot camp training the voyage across the Pacific, only to die from a bullet fired by someone they couldn't locate, couldn't fight back against, couldn't even see. The frustration built like pressure behind a dam. Every patrol became a lottery. Every movement through the jungle a calculated risk. The Japanese snipers had perfect concealment and perfect angles. Standard suppression fire was useless. You can't suppress an enemy you can't find. Elias watched his squad mates die. Watched the fear take root. Watched the company slow down, become cautious, lose the aggressive momentum that Marines were trained to maintain. He'd seen this before. Not in war, but in the mountains. He'd seen deer patterns change when hunters pressured them too hard. Seen them adapt, become nocturnal, alter their routes. The Japanese snipers were doing the same thing. Adapting, learning, exploiting the Marines' inability to counter their tactics. One night, sitting in his fighting hole, cleaning his M1, Garand Elias thought about his father, about the hunting lessons, about patience and precision, and the difference between shooting hoping to hit versus shooting knowing you'd hit. The Marine Corps doctrine emphasized firepower, volume. The theory was that overwhelming fire would suppress enemy positions. That individual marksmanship mattered less than collective rate of fire. But that doctrine had no answer for invisible snipers in jungle canopy. No counter for patient men who fired once and disappeared. No solution for an enemy that turned the Marines' own aggression against them. Elias made a decision that night, a decision that would change everything. The next morning he approached Sergeant Frank Dalton, his platoon sergeant, a veteran of the First World War, though he rarely spoke about it, a man who believed in Marine Corps doctrine with religious conviction. "Sergeant, I need to request a scoped rifle." Dalton looked up from the map he was studying, studied Elias for a long moment. "Request denied." "Sergeant, I grew up hunting. I know how to." "This ain't hunting, Brennick. This is war. We suppress with volume. We maneuver and assault. We don't sit around playing sharpshooter." "The Japanese snipers are killing us, and we'll kill them when we locate their positions, with combined arms, artillery, air support, not with one Marine and a scope." Elias started to argue, then stopped. He recognized the look in Dalton's eyes, the same look his father got when his mind was made up. No amount of reasoning would change it. "Understood, Sergeant." He walked away, but the idea didn't leave him. It grew, crystallized, became the only solution that made sense. That evening, using paper and a pencil stub, Elias wrote a letter. Not home. His mother didn't need to know what he was planning. Instead, he wrote to a sporting goods company whose catalogue he'd seen in the rear echelon supply area. The letter was simple. He wanted a Weaver 330C hunting scope. The catalogue price was $32. He had $38 in saved pay. He provided the address of the supply depot and requested expedited shipping. He mailed the letter the next day. Knew it would take weeks to reach the States. Knew the response would take even longer. But patience was something he understood. Waiting was half the battle. January became February. February became March. The Japanese snipers continued killing Marines. The toll climbed. 15 dead, then 18, then 23. Elias's squadmates began to notice his frustration, his silence, the way he studied the jungle canopy during patrols, looking for patterns, searching for the telltale signs he'd learned hunting deer. Corporal Jimmy Voss, a Montana native who'd grown up hunting elk in the Rockies, approached him one evening. "You see it too, don't you?" "See what?" "The way they hunt. It's not random. They've got patterns, preferred angles, kill zones they return to." Elias nodded. "Like deer coming back to the same water source." "Exactly. We could counter them if we hunted them the same way they hunt us." "Sergeant Dalton won't authorize it." Voss grunted. "Dalton's a good Marine, but he's fighting the last war. This ain't trench warfare. This is something different." They sat in silence for a while. Two hunters, trapped in an infantry war, watching men die because the tactics didn't match the terrain. Then word came. A package at the supply depot, addressed to Private First Class Elias Brennick. He made the trip back to the rear echelon the next morning, found the package waiting. Brown paper, string binding, postage stamps from 3 different cities showing how far it had traveled. Inside, wrapped in newspaper, was the Weaver 330C scope, machined steel, glass optics, adjustment knobs for windage and elevation, exactly what he'd ordered, almost exactly. The shipping had been rough. One of the mounting brackets was bent. The optics themselves seemed intact, but the scope sat slightly crooked in its housing. Elias carried it back to the company area. Voss saw it first. "Is that what I think it is?" "Hunting scope. Ordered it 2 months ago." "Dalton's going to lose his mind." "Dalton doesn't have to know. Not yet." That night by lamplight, Elias worked on mounting the scope to his Springfield rifle. The M1 Garand couldn't accept a scope without major modifications. But the Springfield, the older bolt-action rifle that some Marines still carried, had mounting options. He didn't have proper rings, didn't have the tools a gunsmith would use. What he had was aluminum scraps salvaged from damaged aircraft parts. A file. Patience. He worked for 3 hours, filing, fitting, testing. The mount was crude, imperfect. The scope sat slightly misaligned. But when he looked through the optics, the image was clear. 4-power magnification. Enough to identify targets at ranges the iron sights couldn't manage. He test-fired the next morning during a lull in patrol schedules. 5 rounds at a makeshift target 200 yards distant. The first shot hit 6 inches low and 3 inches right. He adjusted the scope. Second shot, 4 inches low, 1 inch right. Adjusted again. By the 5th shot, he was hitting center mass. The mount was imperfect, but muscle memory could compensate. He'd done it before, hunting with his father's rifle that pulled slightly left. The human mind could adapt, could learn to adjust for mechanical imperfections. Word spread through the company. Brennick had a scope, ordered it through the mail, mounted it himself on a Springfield. The mockery started immediately. "Hey, mailbox! That toy gun gonna stop Japanese bullets. Catalog cowboy thinks he's Buffalo Bill. How much that mail-order scope cost? $30, could have bought 30 beers instead." Brennick said nothing, just cleaned his rifle, checked the scope alignment, practiced estimating ranges using trees and terrain features. The nickname stuck. Mailbox, said with derision, with contempt. The implication clear he'd wasted money on a useless accessory, brought a hunting tool into a war zone. Demonstrated that he didn't understand the difference between shooting deer and fighting Japanese soldiers. Even some of the more sympathetic Marines questioned his judgment. "Look, Brennick, I get it. You can shoot, but that scope's going to get you killed. Japanese snipers will see the sun reflect off the glass. They'll target you first. The mount's going to break first time you go prone in the mud. Sergeant Dalton's going to make you remove it when he finds out." Only Voss defended the decision, quietly, without making a scene. "Leave him alone. At least he's trying something, which is more than the rest of you armchair tacticians." But even Voss had doubts. Brennick could see it in his eyes. The concern, the worry that the mail-order scope was a death sentence rather than a solution. Sergeant Dalton said nothing at first, just watched, studied Brennick with the expression of a man trying to decide if this was defiance or initiative. Finally, 3 days after the scope arrived, Dalton pulled Brennick aside. "That scope on your rifle, I didn't authorize it." "No, Sergeant, you didn't. Should order you to remove it." "Yes, Sergeant." Dalton was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked toward the jungle, toward the positions where Japanese snipers waited, where more Marines would die tomorrow and the day after. "How many deer you killed, Brennick, before the war?" 43, Sergeant. Over 8 years. "Ever miss?" "Once. When I was 12. Wind shifted. I didn't compensate." Dalton nodded slowly. "The brass won't like it. They'll say you're violating uniformity regulations. Say you're creating a precedent other Marines might follow." "Yes, Sergeant. But the brass ain't out here watching men die to invisible shooters." Dalton met his eyes. "I see that scope on your rifle during inspections. I'm going to have to write you up. Understand?" "Yes, Sergeant." "But what happens on patrol in the jungle where I can't see every piece of equipment every Marine carries?" Dalton shrugged. "That's between you and the enemy." It was as close to approval as Brennick would get. Unofficial permission. A platoon sergeant looking the other way because losses were mounting and doctrine had no answers. "Thank you, Sergeant." "Don't thank me, just don't get killed." "And if that scope works, if you actually drop one of those Japanese bastards, then maybe the mockery stops. Maybe the brass pays attention. Maybe we save some lives." Dalton walked away. Brennick stood there holding his modified Springfield, feeling the weight of expectation settle onto shoulders already carrying too much. The next morning, March 18th, a patrol moving through Ridge Green came under fire. 7 Marines in the formation, 3 killed in the first 30 seconds, shot through the head or throat before they could take cover. The surviving Marines retreated under covering fire, dragging their wounded, unable to locate the shooter, unable to return effective fire against an enemy they couldn't see. A second patrol was sent in 2 hours later. Same result. 1 dead, 2 wounded. No enemy contact beyond the bullets themselves. The Japanese sniper or snipers had perfect concealment and perfect angles. Standard suppression fire was useless. Artillery couldn't be called without risking nearby friendly positions. The ridge was a no-go zone, a killing ground. Sergeant Dalton assembled the platoon that evening, explained the situation. 3 Marines dead, their bodies still out there, the sniper still in position. "I need a volunteer, someone to go in and eliminate the threat directly." Silence. Every Marine understood what volunteering meant, walking into a kill zone, hunting an enemy who'd already killed 5 men, facing a trained Japanese sniper who had every advantage. It was suicide. Everyone knew it, except maybe one person. Elias Brennick stood up, Springfield in hand, the mail-order scope catching lamplight. The platoon went silent. Some men looked away. Others stared. The mockery from the previous days suddenly felt hollow, cheap. Because whatever else could be said about Mailbox, whatever jokes had been made about his catalogue gun, he was standing up when no one else would. Sergeant Dalton studied him. "You sure about this, Brennick?" "Yes, Sergeant. That sniper's a professional, trained, experienced. He's killed 5 Marines in 2 days." "Yes, Sergeant. And you think a mail-order scope and some deer hunting experience is enough?" Brennick thought about his father, about the lessons learned in Pennsylvania mountains, about patience and precision and the difference between shooting hoping to hit versus shooting knowing you'd hit. "Someone has to go, Sergeant, and I'm the only one with the equipment to do it." Dalton looked like he wanted to argue, wanted to order Brennick to stand down, save him from what seemed like certain death. But the bodies were still out there, the sniper was still in position, and no one else was volunteering. "All right, you'll go in at dawn. I'm assigning you a spotter." He turned to the platoon. "Voss, you're with Brennick." Jimmy Voss stood without hesitation. "Yes, Sergeant," some of the Marines muttered. Others shook their heads. A few looked at Brennick with something approaching respect. Or maybe pity. Hard to tell the difference. That night, Brennick cleaned his rifle, checked the scope alignment, practiced his breathing. Voss sat nearby, equally quiet, checking his own equipment. Finally, Voss spoke. "You really think we can do this?" "I don't know, but I know sitting here while men die isn't working. That scope, it's really going to help. It's better than iron sights, and I know how to use it." Voss nodded. "I grew up hunting elk. My father taught me to track, to read sign, to understand animal behavior." He paused. "You think Japanese snipers are that different from animals? They're smarter, better equipped, more dangerous. But they still have patterns, habits, preferences." "Yeah, they do." They sat in silence for a while, 2 hunters preparing for a hunt unlike anything they'd experienced, where the prey could shoot back, where mistakes meant death, where all the skills learned in peaceful mountains would be tested against an enemy who'd been training for this exact scenario. Voss handed Brennick something. A photograph, creased, worn from being carried in a pocket. "My family. Montana. If I don't make it back, make sure they know I was trying to do something that mattered." Brennick looked at the photo. Voss with his parents, younger siblings, standing in front of a cabin with mountains behind them. Faces that looked like they belonged to people who understood hard work and harder winters. "We'll both make it back." "Maybe, but just in case." Brennick handed the photo back. "Keep it. You'll give it to them yourself when this is over." Voss smiled, slight, tired. "You're either the bravest Marine I've met or the craziest. Probably both." Dawn came too quickly, the jungle still shrouded in mist. Visibility less than 30 yards, the air thick with moisture, every breath heavy. Uniforms already soaked with sweat despite the early hour. Brennick led, moving in deliberate slow-motion steps, placing each boot carefully to avoid snapping twigs, eyes scanning the canopy above and the undergrowth ahead. The Springfield cradled in his elbows. The mail-order scope a weight he was still learning to balance. Voss followed 10 yards back, covering the flanks, watching for movement. Carrying his M1 Garand ready, knowing that if shooting started his job was suppression, while Brennick took the precision shot. They reached the ridge-green perimeter by 0700 hours, entering the kill zone where the previous patrols had been hit. Brennick dropped to a crouch, then to his belly, crawling forward through mud and leaf litter. The Springfield heavy, the scope vulnerable to damage from the terrain, but necessary, essential, the only advantage he had. He could see the bodies of the fallen Marines, still lying where they dropped. Young men sprawled in the unnatural poses death creates, their weapons fallen beside them, blood dried to brown on green uniforms. The sight hit him hard. These weren't deer, weren't animals harvested for food. These were men. Somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's friend. For a moment, Brennick questioned everything, questioned if he had any right to be here. If his hunting skills meant anything against a trained enemy soldier, if the mail-order scope was anything more than a death sentence wrapped in $32 of false confidence. Then he remembered his father, remembered the lessons, remembered that good men were dying, and someone had to try to stop it. He studied the angles, the bullet trajectories based on wound placement, working backward to estimate firing positions. Japanese snipers often tied themselves into trees, used harnesses to stabilize their aim, sometimes stayed in position for days. He scanned the canopy, looking not for a man but for anomalies, unnatural shapes, shadow inconsistencies, anything that broke the organic chaos of the jungle. Minutes passed, became an hour, the heat building, insects crawling, mud seeping through his uniform. Brennick remained motionless, patient, waiting for the forest to reveal its secrets to someone willing to wait. Then Voss whispered, barely audible. "Movement! Left flank! 40 yards!" Brennick shifted his aim, peered through the scope, adjusted for the dim light filtering through canopy. Saw nothing at first, then a flicker. Not movement exactly, but wrongness. A section of branch that didn't sway with the others when breeze pushed through the canopy. He focused, slowed his breathing, his heartbeat steady. The crosshairs settled. There. A shape. Human form wrapped in camouflage netting. Nestled in the fork of a banyan tree 20 feet off the ground. The Japanese sniper was looking the other direction, scanning the approach route the previous patrols had used. Brennick exhaled half a breath, squeezed the trigger. The Springfield cracked, recoil punching his shoulder, the scope momentarily losing the target. When he reacquired the position, the shape was falling, tumbling through branches, hitting the ground with a wet thud that echoed through the jungle silence. Voss confirmed. One down, but Brennick's shot had given away his position. Within seconds, 2 more rifle cracks echoed from different positions, bullets snapping through air inches above his head, splintering bark from the tree he'd used for cover. Multiple snipers, a coordinated team. The ridge-green kill zone was more complex than anyone had realized. Brennick rolled left, putting a tree trunk between himself and incoming fire, his mind racing through geometry. 2 shooters, one northeast, one due east, both elevated. He couldn't engage both simultaneously. Voss crawled up beside him, breathing hard, eyes wide. "We're in a triangulated kill zone." "I know. What do we do?" Brennick made the decision instantly. They couldn't retreat, couldn't stay pinned. Had to take the fight to the enemy, now, while he knew where they were. He pointed toward the northeast contact, gestured for Voss to provide suppressive fire on his signal. Voss nodded, gripped his Garand tight. Brennick counted silently, visualizing the movements he'd need to make, the angles he'd need to achieve, the precision required under pressure he'd never experienced. Then he gave the signal. Voss rose to a crouch, firing rapid shots toward the northeast position, not aiming to kill, aiming to force the sniper's head down, to create a window of opportunity measured in seconds. Brennick shifted right, scope up, searching the eastern canopy. There. Another shape. Palm tree, partially obscured by fronds. The sniper was tracking Voss, lining up a shot. Brennick fired first. The bullet struck center mass, the sniper jerking backward, his rifle falling, his body slumping against the harness that held him. 2 down. Voss stopped firing. Silence crashed back into the jungle, broken only by distant bird calls and the ringing in Brennick's ears. He waited, motionless, scope sweeping for a third contact. Minutes passing, each one stretching, heart pounding. Adrenaline making his hands shake. Nothing. No more shots. No more movement. Voss moved forward cautiously, confirming the second kill, then the first. Both Japanese snipers dead. Both professionals who'd killed Marines for weeks. Both eliminated by a 20-year-old with a mail-order scope they'd mocked as a toy. They recovered the bodies of the fallen Marines. Brutal work. The dead were heavy, dead weight in the truest sense, and the jungle terrain made every yard a battle. By the time they reached the company perimeter, both men were exhausted, covered in mud and blood, uniforms shredded from crawling through undergrowth. Sergeant Dalton met them. No speeches, just a quiet nod, the kind of acknowledgement that meant more than words. The other Marines watched in silence, the mockery gone, replaced by something else. Maybe respect, maybe just recognition that the mail-order gun worked. That night, cleaning his rifle, Brennick felt the weight of what he'd done. He'd killed 2 men, 2 enemy soldiers, yes, 2 threats eliminated, but still men, with families, with lives before the war, with reasons for fighting that made sense to them, even if Brennick would never understand. But he also felt something else. Purpose. For the first time since landing on Bougainville, his skills were being used correctly. The hunting lessons weren't wasted. The mail-order scope wasn't a joke. He'd proven them wrong. The squad, the doubters, maybe even himself. And tomorrow, when more Marines would need someone to counter the invisible snipers, he'd be ready. The nickname was already changing. He could hear it in how the men spoke. Not mailbox anymore. Something else. Something that would stick for the rest of the campaign. Ghost. Because that's what he'd become. a phantom in the jungle, hunting the hunters, using skills learned in Pennsylvania mountains to save lives in a Pacific Island hell. The mail-order scope that cost $32 had just proven its worth. 2 enemy snipers eliminated. 3 Marine bodies recovered. A kill zone cleared. But this was only the beginning. The Japanese had dozens more snipers in the Bougainville jungle, and Elias Brennick, with his catalogue scope and his father's lessons, was just getting started. Ridge Green was secure, but the war was far from over, and the Ghost had 22 more kills waiting in the shadows ahead. The word spread fast. 2 Japanese snipers killed at Ridge Green. The Marine with the mail-order scope had done what everyone said was impossible. By nightfall, the mockery had stopped. Men who'd called Brennick mailbox 3 days ago now watched him clean his rifle in silence. Not admiration, exactly. More like reassessment. The careful distance you'd give someone who'd just walked through fire and come out alive. Corporal Voss sat beside him, rewrapping the field dressing on his leg. The bullet graze from Ridge Green had bled through the first bandage. Not serious enough for evacuation. Serious enough to remind both men how close they'd come. "Dalton wants to see you," Voss said. Brennick nodded, continued running the bore brush through the Springfield's barrel. 3 passes. 4. The ritual calmed him. A weapon was an extension of yourself. Had to be maintained, trusted, respected. He reassembled the scope, checked the crude aluminum mount, still holding. The hand-filed edges caught lamplight, rough but functional. Proof that improvisation could work, that the system's answer wasn't always the only answer. Sergeant Dalton was studying topographic maps when Brennick found him. Red marks indicating known Japanese positions, black X's showing where Marines had died. Too many black X's. "Good work today," Dalton said without looking up. "Thank you, Sergeant." "Company commander wants to know if you can do it again." "Yes, Sergeant." Dalton finally looked at him, studied his face. "You understand what you're signing up for? This won't be normal patrol rotation anymore. This is hunting. Alone. Deep in territory where they have every advantage." "I understand, Sergeant." "Do you?" Dalton set down his map. "Those 2 you killed today. They were professionals, trained specialists, graduates of schools where they spent months learning this. And you killed them with a hunting scope you ordered through a catalogue." "Yes, Sergeant." "That was luck, Brennick. Good shooting, yes, but also luck. You caught them focused on old patrol routes. They didn't know you were coming. Next time they will. They'll adapt, learn, come at you different." Brennick thought about the Pennsylvania mountains, about deer that learned from pressure, that changed patterns when hunters pushed too hard. That became nocturnal, altered routes grew cautious. "They'll adapt," he agreed. "But so will I." Dalton studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. You're officially on counter-sniper duty. No regular patrols. You hunt when and where you think best. Voss will spot when his leg heals. Until then, you work alone." "Yes, Sergeant." "And Brennick. That scope everyone mocked. It works. So I'm officially looking the other way now. Anyone gives you trouble about unauthorized equipment, send them to me." "Thank you, Sergeant." "Don't thank me. Just keep our boys alive." The next kill came 3 days later. March 22nd. Intelligence reported a sniper operating near the southern perimeter. 2 Marines wounded in the same sector over 2 days. Same general area, but different exact positions. The sniper was mobile, cautious, learning from Marine response patterns. Brennick studied the terrain. The reported contact points formed a triangle roughly 300 yards on each side. The sniper was working inside that triangle, taking shots from different positions, never repeating. Smart, professional, exactly what Dalton had warned about. Brennick approached from outside the triangle, moved through undergrowth so dense he had to crawl for stretches. The Springfield was cumbersome, the scope vulnerable to damage from vines and branches, but necessary. He found the first position at 0900 hours, a spider hole at the base of a massive tree, camouflaged with fresh vegetation. Too fresh, leaves still green, not yet wilted from being cut, the wrongness he'd learned to see. But the hole was empty, abandoned. The sniper had already moved. Brennick studied the position anyway, looked for patterns, for clues about how this particular enemy thought. The spider hole faced east, gave clear view of a Marine patrol route. But the position was too obvious, too exposed from flanks. A professional would see the vulnerability. Which meant this wasn't the primary position. This was bait. Brennick felt ice in his stomach. He'd almost walked into a trap. Would have if he'd approached from the obvious direction. The Japanese sniper had anticipated Marine counter-tactics, had prepared a secondary position to kill whoever came hunting. The realization was humbling, terrifying. These weren't deer. These were men who thought, planned, set traps for hunters. He backed out slowly, circled wide, approached from the northwest now, off-angle from the spider hole. It took him 4 hours to find the real position. A blind built into the hollow of a bombed-out tree trunk, invisible from 3 sides. Perfect field of fire toward both the spider hole and the patrol route beyond. The Japanese sniper was waiting. Patient, expecting someone to investigate the obvious position. Brennick was 200 yards away, uphill, through dense foliage. The shot would be technical, difficult, but possible. He settled into position, controlled his breathing, calculated windage and elevation. The crosshairs found the gap in the tree trunk where he could just barely see shadow that didn't belong. He waited. 6 hours, motionless. The sun climbed. The heat became crushing. Insects crawled over him. His muscles cramped. He ignored everything. At 14:30 hours, a Marine patrol moved through the sector, following their standard route, unaware of the danger. The Japanese sniper shifted, just slightly, preparing to fire at the spider hole area where he expected a counter-sniper to be investigating. The movement was what Brennick needed. The shadow became shape, human form visible for just a moment through the gap. He fired. The Springfield cracked. The recoil, the smoke. Through the scope he saw the impact, saw the shape jerk and slump. Kill number 3. The patrol heard the shot, went to ground, called for support, but they weren't hit. The Japanese sniper, who'd been seconds from firing at them, was dead. Brennick waited 2 more hours, making sure there wasn't a second sniper, a partner, another layer to the trap. Nothing. Just him and the body in the hollow tree, and the knowledge that he'd almost died today. Almost walked into a trap, set by an enemy who understood exactly what he was doing. That night, cleaning his rifle, Brennick's hands shook. Not from fear, exactly. From the realization of how close he'd come. How a smarter enemy, a more careful enemy, could kill him just as easily as he'd killed them. Voss noticed. "You okay?" He set a trap. The spider hole was bait. He was waiting for whoever came to investigate. "But you didn't fall for it." "Almost did. Another minute different approach angle, I'd be dead." Voss was quiet. Then, "But you're not. You saw it. Adapted. That's why you're still here. This time. Next time might be different. Then we make sure there's no next time. We stay smarter, more careful." Brennick nodded. But the confidence he'd felt after Ridge Green was gone, replaced by understanding that this was a different kind of hunting, where the prey could think, could plan, could kill the hunter. The kills came faster after that, but Brennick was more cautious, more deliberate. Kill 4. March 25th. A sniper in a palm tree. Brennick spotted him by the unnatural way fronds were arranged. Took the shot from 300 yards through gaps in the canopy. Clean kill. But he waited 4 hours afterward, watching for partners. Found none. Kills 5 and 6. March 28th. A paired team working a ridgeline. They'd killed a Marine the previous day. Brennick tracked them through undergrowth, moving with glacial slowness. Found them in connected positions, able to provide cover for each other. He killed the primary first, sent a mass. The second sniper panicked, tried to relocate. Exposed himself for 3 seconds. That was enough. Brennick's second shot took him through the head. 2 more faces for the collection in his nightmares. By early April, his count stood at 6 confirmed kills. The Japanese sniper threat in the sector was noticeably reduced. Marine patrols reported fewer contacts, moved with more confidence. But Brennick felt the weight building. 6 men, 6 decisions, 6 triggers pulled, 6 lives ended by choices he'd made alone in the jungle. He slept poorly, saw their faces when he closed his eyes. Young faces, mostly. The spider hole sniper had looked maybe 20. The palm tree sniper had grey in his beard, might have been 40. The paired team were brothers Brennick learned later from captured documents, had requested assignment together. He'd killed brothers, men who'd fought side by side, died within seconds of each other. The knowledge sat heavy. Voss recovered fully by April 5th, returned to duty as Brennick's spotter. His presence helped, shared the burden, made decisions feel less solitary. 6 confirmed, Voss said one evening. That's 6 snipers who won't kill any more Marines. You know what that means. I killed 6 human beings. You saved maybe 30, maybe 50. Every one of those snipers would have kept killing if you hadn't stopped them. Doesn't make it easier. It's not supposed to be easy. My father told me something once, about hunting. He said the day taking a life becomes easy is the day you've lost something important. What? Your humanity. Brennick thought about that. The weight he felt wasn't weakness. It was proof he was still human, still capable of recognizing cost. The thought helped. A little. Then came April 12th. Green hell. The briefing was grim. A 2-mile stretch of jungle that had become impassable. 4 Marine patrols ambushed there in 3 days. 8 dead, 15 wounded. The corridor was designated off-limits. Too dangerous. Intelligence estimated at least 6 Japanese snipers operating in overlapping fields of fire, creating a killing zone no Marine unit could penetrate without massive casualties. Dalton called Brennick in, showed him the maps. The red marks clustered thick in that 2-mile stretch. Can you clear it? Brennick studied the terrain. The elevation changes, the likely positions based on previous attack patterns. This wasn't 6 isolated threats. This was a coordinated defense, professionals working together. I can try, Sergeant. This is different, Brennick. This isn't hunting individual snipers. This is dismantling a system. They'll be covering each other, supporting. The moment you take a shot, the others will know. We'll triangulate. We'll kill you. Yes, Sergeant. So I'm asking again, can you do this? Brennick thought about his father, about the hardest hunt they'd ever done. A wounded bear in the North 40, dangerous, unpredictable. His father had said, sometimes the hunt finds you. Sometimes you have to decide if you're hunter enough to face it. I can do it, Sergeant, but I need Voss, and I need all day. Can't rush this. Dalton nodded. You've got whatever you need. Just bring our boys home. April 12th. Dawn. Brennick and Voss entered Green Hell from the northeast. The jungle here was different, denser, darker. The canopy so thick that sunlight barely penetrated. Perfect sniper country. Nightmare for everything else. They moved for 2 hours before Brennick spotted the first position. Not a sniper, just a position. A firing port carved into a tree trunk. The bark had been modified to create a shooting aperture maybe 4 inches wide. Brennick glassed it, saw movement inside. Shadow. The faint outline of a rifle barrel. Range 180 yards, through undergrowth. At an angle that required compensating for elevation. He settled, controlled his breathing. The Springfield spoke. Through the scope he saw the impact, saw the shadow jerk. Fall silent. Kill number 7. But the shot gave away their position. Within 2 seconds, rifle fire erupted from multiple directions, bullets cracking through air, splintering trees, kicking up mud. At least 3 other snipers, all firing at where the sound had come from. Brennick and Voss separated instantly. Standard counter-ambush. Make yourself harder to target. Create confusion about numbers. Brennick rolled right, behind a fallen log, scanning for muzzle flashes. There, northeast, elevated, maybe 40 yards. He aimed, fired. The sniper jerked, went silent. Kill number 8, another muzzle flash, due east. But this one was firing at Voss's position. Brennick relocated, circled through undergrowth, came at the sniper from an unexpected angle. The enemy was focused on where Voss had been. Not where Brennick was now. The shot took him through the side. Kill number 9. The jungle went quiet. 3 down in maybe 5 minutes. But Brennick knew there were more. Intelligence said 6. He'd only found 3. He signaled Voss. They moved deeper. Every sense alert, every step calculated. The 4th sniper didn't fire, didn't move, remained perfectly disciplined in a position that gave overview of the entire corridor. Brennick found him by elimination. By studying every tree, every shadow, every possible location. By looking for wrongness. There. Discoloration in bark. Too uniform. The sniper had modified the tree to blend in, but the modification was the tell. The shot was technical. 240 yards. Through vegetation. Uphill. Crosswind. Brennick calculated. Adjusted. Waited for wind to settle. The bullet found its mark. Kill number 10. 2 left. According to intelligence, they searched for another hour. The tension building. Knowing the remaining snipers knew their partners were dead, knew they were being hunted, would be desperate, dangerous. Voss spotted the 5th position, a bombed-out tree trunk from earlier fighting. The shadows inside were wrong. Brennick glassed it, saw the faint glint of a scope. The Japanese sniper was making the same mistake everyone made. The scope that gave advantage also gave you away. He aimed for the glint, fired through debris. The glint disappeared. Kill number 11. 1 left. They searched for 3 more hours. Found nothing. The 6th sniper, if he existed, was exceptional. Or intelligence was wrong about the count. Brennick was about to call it when he saw wrongness. Not a position, just wrongness. A section of massive tree trunk where the bark pattern was too perfect, too uniform. He studied it. Couldn't see any opening, any way to shoot from that position. But instinct screamed something was wrong. He aimed center mass, where a human body would be if someone was pressed against the tree. Fired. The bullet impacted. Bark exploded. Behind it, revealed by damage, was a carefully constructed hide. The Japanese sniper had built a shell over himself, become part of the tree. The shot had hit him through the camouflage. Kill number 12. Green hell was clear. Brennick and Voss sat in silence afterward, both men shaking from adrenaline crash, both understanding how close they'd come to dying a dozen times in the past 8 hours. 12, Voss said finally. 12 confirmed kills. You're ghost for real now. Brennick didn't feel like a ghost. He felt tired, old, like he'd aged years in a single day. That night he couldn't sleep. The faces came, 12 of them now, some young, some old, all human, all dead because of decisions he'd made. The kills continued through late April, methodical, necessary, each one adding weight. Kill 13. April 15th, sniper in a collapsed bunker. Brennick spotted him by unnatural debris arrangement. 200 yards through a 6-inch firing slit. Clean kill. Kills 14 and 15. April 18th. Paired snipers on the western perimeter, both killed in 90 seconds. The pattern was familiar now. First the primary, then the spotter, before he could react. Kills 16. April 22nd, the hardest of the sequence. A Japanese sniper who'd learned from watching his comrades die, who changed positions daily, never fired twice from the same spot, never established pattern. Brennick hunted him for 3 days, studied his territory, looked for the patterns within the apparent randomness. Everyone had patterns, even when trying not to. He finally caught the sniper moving between hides at dawn, the transition moment when the enemy was most vulnerable. Single shot at 340 yards, the longest kill of the campaign. The bullet traveled for what felt like forever. Then impact. The sniper fell. Kill number 16. Brennick approached the body afterward, found something that made his stomach turn. The Japanese sniper was a woman, maybe 30, short hair, lean, professional, a Type 97 rifle with quality optics. He found a photograph in her pocket. 2 children, young, smiling. She'd been someone's mother. Brennick covered her body carefully, put the photograph back where he'd found it, walked away feeling sick. That night he broke, completely, sat in his fighting hole shaking, unable to stop, unable to process that he'd just killed a mother, that somewhere in Japan 2 children would grow up without her because of him. Voss found him there, sat beside him, didn't speak, just presence. Finally, Brennick said she had children, 2 kids. I saw the photograph. I know. How do I live with that? The same way you live with all of it. You remember she was a sniper. A professional, who'd killed Marines, who would have kept killing if you hadn't stopped her. She was a mother. She was also a soldier. Both things can be true. Brennick knew Voss was right, but it didn't help, didn't reduce the weight, didn't make the photograph of those children disappear from his memory. Kill 17 came on April 28th. Another spider hole, another 6-hour wait, another face for the nightmares. By month's end, the count stood at 17 confirmed kills. The psychological toll was visible now. Brennick had lost 15 pounds. His hands trembled when not holding the rifle. His eyes had taken on a 1,000-yard quality that other Marines recognized. Combat fatigue, the look of someone who'd seen too much, done too much. Medic Major Carson pulled him aside. How long since you slept through the night? I don't know, sir. How long since you ate a full meal? Not sure, sir. You're showing classic signs of combat stress. I'm ordering 72 hours stand down, mandatory rest, no arguments. But sir, that's an order, Brennick. You're no good to anyone if you collapse. 3 days, rest, eat, try to sleep, then we'll see. The stand down was torture, sitting in the rear while patrols went out, hearing reports of sniper activity, knowing he should be there. But his body was failing. His hands shook constantly, his vision blurred, his mind couldn't focus. He spent the time cleaning his rifle, reading letters from home. His mother had written about the farm, about normal life that seemed impossible to imagine. She said his father would be proud, that the skills he'd taught were being put to good use. Good use. Brennick almost laughed. Was killing 17 people good use of hunting skills? But then he thought about the Marines who'd walked safely through green hell, about patrols that crossed dangerous ground without casualties, about lives saved. Maybe it was good use, even if it cost him everything. On the third day, Voss brought news. Intercepted Japanese communications. Translated. The enemy command was confused, frustrated. Their sniper teams were being eliminated at unsustainable rates. They theorized an American counter-sniper unit, multiple shooters, coordinated operations. None suspected it was one 20-year-old Marine with a mail-order scope. "You're a ghost to them," Voss said. "They can't figure it out, can't adapt, can't counter what they don't understand." The nickname had spread throughout the company. Ghost. The Marine who hunted invisible enemies, who killed from impossible distances with civilian equipment. When the 72 hours ended, Brennick picked up his rifle, checked the scope, loaded fresh ammunition. Sergeant Dalton had new assignments, more positions, more threats. "You ready?" Brennick thought about his father, about Pennsylvania mountains, about lessons that had prepared him for this hell. "Yes, Sergeant." But he wasn't. The weight of 17 kills was crushing. Each face haunted him. Each decision marked him. Still, he walked into the jungle again, because Marines needed him, because the alternative was watching good men die. Voss walked beside him, silent, understanding. May arrived. The campaign was winding down, but isolated Japanese resistance persisted, and 7 more kills waited in the shadows. 7 more decisions, 7 more faces, until the ghost of Bougainville completed his tally. 24 confirmed, countless lives saved, 1 man, one $32 scope, and a price measured in nightmares that would last a lifetime. May 3rd, 1944. Kill 18. A sniper near a supply route. 4 hours of observation. The mechanics had become muscle memory. Spot. Calculate. Wait. Fire. Confirm. Pattern familiar. Professional enemy. Clean shot at 200 yards. Another face for the nightmares. May 6th. Kills 19 and 20. Paired snipers working the eastern sector. They'd wounded 3 Marines over 2 days. Brennick tracked them, found their positions. First shot dropped the primary. Second shot took the spotter as he reached for his rifle. Both killed in under 30 seconds. The count climbed. 20 confirmed. The number felt meaningless. Each one was a human life. A decision made. A trigger pulled. May 8th. Kills 21 and 22. Japanese resistance was collapsing, but isolated snipers remained. Holdouts. True believers. Men who'd fight until killed. Brennick found them in defensive positions near the western ridge. Methodical elimination. No drama. No close calls. Just professional work. 2 more confirmed kills. 2 more photographs he'd never forget. One sniper carried a letter from his wife. The other had children's drawings folded in his pocket. Brennick left them with the bodies. Some dignity in death. Some respect for enemy soldiers who'd done their duty. May 9th, 1944. The mission that would be his last as a counter-sniper. A Japanese sniper had taken position overlooking a critical river crossing, the only practical ford for miles. Strategic terrain that Marine units needed to control. 2 days earlier, a patrol had attempted to cross. 2 Marines were killed, both shot while in the water, vulnerable, exposed. Easy targets for a sniper with elevation and cover. The crossing had been declared off-limits, too dangerous. But terrain meant units had to detour 6 miles to find an alternative. 6 miles through hostile jungle. 6 miles of additional exposure. The company commander wanted the sniper eliminated before the next major patrol movement tomorrow. Dalton called Brennick in, showed him the maps. 1 sniper, elevated position, perfect field of fire over the crossing. Unknown exact location, but somewhere in this tree line. Can you find him? Brennick studied the terrain, the angles, where he would position himself if he were the Japanese sniper. I can try, Sergeant. Patrol crosses tomorrow at 1400 hours. That's when he'll fire. That's when you'll have your chance. Understood. Voss was waiting outside. Last one for a while. Maybe. Intelligence thinks the Japanese are rotating sniper teams. Might get a break after this. Good. You need it, Ghost. They moved out at dawn, the jungle already hot. Humidity like a physical weight. The river crossing was half a mile from the perimeter. They approached slowly. Brennick scanning for positions. For sign. The tree line overlooking the ford was 200 yards of dense vegetation. Dozens of possible positions. Finding 1 sniper in that terrain was like finding 1 specific tree in a forest. But Brennick had learned, had developed instincts, could read the jungle. He looked for wrongness, for patterns that didn't fit. The river was shallow here, maybe 3 feet deep. Clear water over smooth stones. Beautiful in other circumstances. Deadly now because crossing meant exposure. 20 seconds of vulnerability. 20 seconds. That's all the Japanese sniper needed. Brennick found a position at the river's edge, partially concealed by overhanging vegetation. View of the opposite tree line while remaining hidden. Then he waited. This was what his father had taught him best. Patience. The ability to remain absolutely still while the world moved around you. He settled into mud, felt it seep through his uniform, felt water lap at his legs, felt insects begin their exploration, ignored it all. Voss was 30 yards behind, watching flanks, ready to provide suppression if needed. Hours passed. The sun climbed. Temperature rose into the 90s. Brennick's position was partially submerged. Water helped cool him, but also meant leeches. He could feel them attaching, feeding. Didn't matter. Couldn't move. His focus remained on the tree line, studying every shadow, every branch, every potential position. At 1100 hours he spotted it. Not the sniper, but wrongness. A section of vegetation too uniform, too carefully arranged. Natural chaos didn't create that pattern. He studied it through the scope. Couldn't see any human form, just wrongness. Instinct screaming something was there. He marked the position mentally. 230 yards, slight uphill angle, minimal wind, through dense foliage creating a narrow shooting corridor. Then he waited. 3 more hours, motionless, patient. At 13:43 hours, he heard movement behind him. The patrol, right on schedule. 12 Marines moving toward the crossing, trusting that Ghost had cleared the threat. The pressure was immense. If he was wrong, if he'd miscalculated, those Marines would die. At 1400 hours exactly, the first Marine stepped into the water. Lance Corporal Morrison, 22 years old, from Ohio. Morrison was 3 steps into the ford when the Japanese sniper fired. The shot came from exactly where Brennick had identified. His instincts correct, but the shot missed. Morrison flinched, stumbled, didn't fall. The bullet had passed inches from his head. Brennick saw the muzzle flash. Tiny, brief, but enough. His return fire was instant. No hesitation. Just muscle memory and 3 months of hunting men. The Springfield cracked. Through the scope he saw the impact, saw the camouflage netting explode, saw the shape behind it jerk and fall. Kill number 23. Morrison finished crossing. Fast. The rest of the patrol followed. Quick, nervous, but alive. All 12. Safe, because Brennick had spent 6 hours lying in mud waiting for one moment. Voss moved up beside him. Good shooting. They waited another hour, then approached the position. Carefully. The Japanese sniper was dead, shot through the upper chest. The bullet had found him through a gap in the camouflage, maybe 8 inches wide. Precision shooting, skill and luck in equal measure. The sniper was young, mid-20s, had a photograph in his pocket, wife and child, smiling, before the war when life made sense. Brennick put the photograph back, covered the body, respect for the dead, even enemy dead, because these weren't monsters. Just men, following orders, doing their duty, different only in which side they'd ended up on. 23, Voss said quietly. Brennick said nothing. 23 felt arbitrary. Each number represented a human life, a decision made, a trigger pulled. They walked back. Morrison's patrol had already reported in. All 12 safe. The crossing secure. Sergeant Dalton met them. Good work. Morrison said you saved his life. Just doing the job, Sergeant. Intelligence says there's one more, operating alone near the northern ridge. Think you can get him? Brennick was exhausted. Wanted to say no. Wanted to put down the rifle and never pick it up again. But Marines were still dying. One more sniper meant more potential casualties. Yes, Sergeant, I can get him. May 11th, 1944. The final hunt. Intelligence had tracked this sniper for 2 weeks. He was careful, disciplined, never fired more than once from any position, moved constantly, avoided patterns. Professional. Maybe the best the Japanese had left in the sector. Brennick spent 2 days studying his territory, looking for the patterns within the apparent randomness. Everyone had patterns, even the best. He found it. A ridge overlooking multiple Marine positions. The sniper moved between 5 different hides, but always returned to the ridge, always covered the same fields of fire. May 13th dawn. Brennick positioned himself not where the sniper was, but where he would be, where he had to be to cover the morning patrol route. Then he waited. 8 hours, the longest wait of the campaign, muscles cramping, thirst building, leeches feeding. He ignored it all. At 1420 hours, he saw movement. Subtle, professional. The Japanese sniper moving into position. Brennick didn't wait for him to settle, didn't give him time to acquire targets, fired the moment he had a clean shot. 320 yards, through jungle canopy, uphill, crosswind. The most difficult shot of the campaign. The bullet travelled true. Kill number 24. Brennick waited. Confirmed. The Japanese sniper was dead, the last holdout in the sector, the final threat. It was over. He walked back that afternoon, rifle slung, covered in mud, exhausted beyond measure. Voss met him at the perimeter, looked at his face, understood, without words. 24, Voss said quietly. 24, Brennick confirmed. That night, Sergeant Dalton pulled him aside. Official word just came down. Bougainville's transitioning to defensive posture. The island's secured. Offensive operations are ending. Understood, Sergeant. Your counter-sniper work is done, Brennick. You cleared them out. All of them. The sector's safe. Brennick nodded. Felt nothing. No relief. No pride. Just exhaustion. I submitted you for Bronze Star with valor, Dalton continued. Documented every kill, every position cleared, every Marine life saved. You deserve recognition. Don't want it, Sergeant. I know, but you earned it, whether you want it or not. The recommendation was denied. The Marine Corps in 1944 didn't have a sniper program, didn't have framework for recognizing what Brennick had done. The report disappeared into bureaucracy, noted, filed, forgotten. Brennick packed away his scope, cleaned his Springfield one last time as a sniper rifle, returned to standard infantry duties. The relief was immediate. No more hunting, no more decisions about who lived and died, no more faces through the scope. But the weight remained. 24 men killed, 24 decisions that couldn't be unmade, 24 souls added to a burden he'd carry forever. The nightmares worsened. Every night the faces came. Young, old, scared, resolved, all asking the same silent question. Why Brennick had no answer. Just duty, just survival. Just the desperate mathematics of war, where killing 24 enemy soldiers meant saving perhaps 100 Marines. September came. The 3rd Marine Division shipped out. Destination, Peleliu. The briefing said 3 days, maybe a week. Light resistance. The briefing was catastrophically wrong. Peleliu was hell. The Japanese had fortified the island with caves and bunkers, prepared defensive positions that turned every yard into a killing ground. Brennick fought as standard infantry, house to house, cave to cave, close quarters brutality where scopes were useless. His Springfield came with him, the scope still attached, but he never used it as a precision weapon. The fighting was too close, too chaotic. He survived. Barely. Watched good men die. Morrison, the Marine he'd saved at the river crossing, was killed on day 4. Took a grenade in a bunker assault. Brennick made sure Morrison's photograph went home with his effects. Peleliu lasted 2 months. Bloodiest fighting in the Pacific. When it ended, Brennick was hollow. The weight of Peleliu added to Bougainville threatened to break him. But the war was ending. Germany surrendered May 1945. Japan followed August 15th. Brennick was 21. Felt 60. The transport home took 3 weeks. Time to think. To process. To try to understand what the past 3 years had meant. He couldn't. The experiences were too big, too heavy. September 1945. San Diego. American soil. Home. Brennick collected his discharge papers. The Springfield came with him. The scope still attached. The mail-order hunting scope that had killed 24 men and saved countless Marines. He took a train across country. Pennsylvania in autumn. The mountains exactly as he remembered. His mother met him at the station. Older, greyer. She hugged him, cried, asked questions he couldn't answer. He found work at a lumber mill, same mill his father had worked. The job was hard, physical, exactly what he needed. No thinking, no decisions about life and death, just honest labor. He met a woman, Sarah, kind, patient, didn't ask about the war. They married in 1946, small ceremony, simple vows. Brennick bought a small house on the edge of the mountains where his father had taught him to hunt. He never hunted again. Sarah suggested it once, saw the rifles in the closet. Brennick said no, quietly, firmly. She never asked again. The Springfield stayed in a case in the attic. Forgotten. Gathering dust. Life became routine. Work. Home. Sarah. Simple pleasures. trying to rebuild something normal. The nightmares continued, less frequent, but no less intense. 24 faces, sometimes more. The unconfirmed kills he suspected, but couldn't prove. Brennick never sought help, never talked about it, just endured, carried the weight silently, the way men of his generation did. Years became decades, the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. Life moved on. Children were born. Brennick provided. Loved them as best he could with whatever part of him hadn't been left in the Pacific. The 1980s brought military historians, researching the Pacific War, trying to document what happened before all the veterans died. One historian found references to Bougainville, to a Marine with a scope rifle who'd killed multiple Japanese snipers, to casualty statistics showing a dramatic drop in sniper deaths April to May 1944. The historian tracked down Sergeant Dalton, retired in Florida. Dalton remembered, gave the historian a name, Elias Brennick, Pennsylvania. The historian found him, the lumber mill, the small house, the man who'd killed 24 confirmed Japanese snipers with a mail-order scope. Brennick refused to talk, politely, firmly. I did a job that needed doing, that's all. No reason to make more of it. The historian persisted, explained the story mattered, showed innovation, initiative. Brennick refused. The past is past. The historian left disappointed, published what he could from other sources. A footnote, a paragraph. Brennick's name appeared, but without details. Exactly how Brennick wanted it. Sarah died in 1987. Cancer. Quick. Brennick was alone. Children grown. Moved away. He retired. Spent his days reading, walking, trying not to think about the past. The nightmares had faded, age making sleep deeper. But the faces never really left, just became part of him. In 1988, cleaning the attic, Brennick found the Springfield, the case dusty, the scope still attached. He opened it, looked at the rifle for the first time in decades. The Weaver, 330C, that had cost $32, that everyone had mocked, that had killed 24 men. He thought about destroying it, but couldn't. It was part of his history. Instead, he donated it, a local veterans organization collecting artifacts for a museum. Brennick gave them the Springfield. Told them it was used in the Pacific, nothing more. The museum accepted gratefully, added it to their collection. Springfield, 1903, with commercial scope. Pacific Theater, donor anonymous. It sat in a display case. Visitors walked past without a second glance. Just another rifle. Nothing special. Exactly how Brennick wanted it. He died in 1989, quietly. Heart attack in his sleep. Quick, no suffering. His children found discharge papers, a few medals he'd never mentioned. Nothing about counter-sniper operations, nothing about 24 kills. They donated everything to the museum, added his name to the memorial wall. Elias Brennick, Private First Class, 3rd Marine Division, 1942 to 1945. A good man who'd done his duty. The Springfield remained in its case. Anonymous. The scope still attached after 45 years. Then in 2018, the museum received an unusual visitor. Master Gunnery Sergeant Robert Cole, Marine Corps Scout Sniper School, Quantico. 62 years old. Career Marine. He saw the Springfield. Stopped. Studied it. The curator noticed. Can I help you? This rifle. You know its history. Just what the placard says. Pacific Theater. Cole pointed to the scope mount. That's hand-filed aluminum. Makeshift. Someone modified this in the field. He examined the scope. Weaver 330C. Civilian hunting scope. Never military issue. I'm afraid we don't have much provenance. Who donated it? The curator checked records. Family of Elias Brennick, local veteran. Died 1989. Cole went very still. Elias Brennick. You're sure? Yes. Why? Because I teach a course at Scout Sniper School, History of Marine Corps Precision Marksmanship. And there's one story we tell, one legend, about the first Marine counter-sniper, Bougainville, 1944. Before the Corps had a formal program. He turned back to the rifle. One Marine, mail-order hunting scope, 24 confirmed kills in 8 weeks. Changed the entire tactical approach to enemy snipers. We've been trying to verify the story for years. Had a name, but no confirmation. Elias Brennick. That's the name. And this, he gestured to the rifle, this is the weapon. Within a month, Marine Corps historians arrived, photographed the rifle, documented every detail, cross-referenced with Japanese records translated in the 1990s. The Japanese archives mentioned the ghost of Bougainville. Systematic elimination of sniper teams. Estimated 20 to 25 kills. The numbers matched. The timeline matched. The weapon matched. Elias Brennick was officially confirmed as one of the first Marine counter-snipers, his 24 kills documented, his innovation recognized as pioneering fieldcraft that predated doctrine by years. The museum updated the placard, Springfield 1903 with Weaver 330C commercial scope, PFC Elias Brennick, 3rd Marine Division. Bougainville Campaign, March to May 1944. 24. Confirmed enemy sniper kills. One of the first counter-sniper operations in Marine Corps history. Brennick purchased the hunting scope with his own money when official equipment was unavailable. His innovation and initiative saved countless Marine lives and established tactics still taught at Scout Sniper School today. Master Gunnery Sergeant Cole returned 6 months later. The Commandant wants to award Brennick the Bronze Star with Valor. Posthumously, for his actions on Bougainville. The ceremony was small, held at the museum. Brennick's daughter attended, 72 years old, had never known the full story. When Cole explained the citation, she cried. He never talked about the war, never, I asked once. He just said he did his job and was glad to come home. That's how the best ones are, Cole said quietly. They don't need to tell the story. They just live with it. After the ceremony, Cole addressed the assembled Marines and veterans. Elias Brennick represents something we try to teach every Marine who goes through Scout Sniper School. It's not about the equipment. It's not about having the best gear. It's about initiative, adaptability, the willingness to solve problems when the system hasn't caught up yet. He gestured to the rifle. That's a $32 hunting scope on a rifle everybody said wouldn't work. Brennick proved them wrong 24 times. And in doing so, he saved maybe 100 Marines, maybe more. Created tactics we still use. Showed that competence and determination matter more than credentials. He paused. Every Marine sniper who graduates our school learns about Brennick, about the mail-order marksman, about the ghost of Bougainville. Because his story reminds us that sometimes the answer isn't in the manual. Sometimes it's in having the courage to improvise. To trust your training. To do what needs doing even when everyone says it's impossible. The rifle remains in the museum. Now, a centerpiece. Marines from Quantico sometimes make the pilgrimage. Stand before the case. Study the crude aluminum mount, the scratched scope, the worn stock. They see what Brennick created from necessity. What he proved was possible. What he started. And somewhere in the way military traditions carry forward, Elias Brennick's legacy lives on. Not in his name on monuments, but in every Marine sniper who learns that innovation matters. That individual initiative can change outcomes. The mail-order scope cost $32. The Bronze Star came 74 years late. But the lives saved the Marines who walked safely through killing grounds. The tactical revolution that started with one man refusing to accept that doctrine had no answer, that was priceless. And that was legacy enough. Elias Brennick, the ghost of Bougainville. The hunter from Pennsylvania who changed war by refusing to fight it the way everyone else did. His rifle sits behind glass, silent, but speaking volumes to those who understand. 24 confirmed kills. Countless lives saved. One man, one $32 scope. And a lesson that echoes across generations. Sometimes the best solutions come from those willing to improvise when the system says impossible. Sometimes it's in a mail-order catalogue, and the courage to prove everyone wrong.